Okay, Paul, let's take a look at your golf swing from February 26th, 2012. I'll just let this play a couple of times. And as you're watching this swing, notice the two questions I have written down. What's your position at the top? And how are you starting the downswing? So keep those two questions in mind as you're watching this video. So let's take a look at those two questions. The first question, what's your position at the top? We'll just touch on that briefly, but then we'll talk in more detail about how you're starting the downswing. So there's your position at the top. Not bad, it's a pretty good position. I think the hands might be a little too high and that left arm a little too steep, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But that's not too bad. If we take a look at the start down, just this section of the swing right here, and I'll just go back and forth through the start of the downswing. That's the area we really need to pay attention to. So let's talk a little bit more about that downswing. And really let's start with what is the purpose of the downswing. So the start of the downswing, which I like to call the start down, three things about the start down. First off, you want to begin shifting weight to the front side. Secondly, you want to start your hands on the correct path. And then you also want to start the club head on the correct path. So as you begin to shift weight to the left side, you're actually going to do that with your hips. I call it a hip bump. That's something we talked about today. You don't see it as much from this camera angle. You'll see it from the face-on view. But don't forget, we're going to be bumping the hips to shift the weight to the left side, bumping the hips toward the target before they start to rotate. But I want you to look more closely at your hand path during the downswing. Let's look at where your hands go. And also, as we're looking at that, we'll look at where the club head is traveling. Now from this position, if I draw a path or a line from your hands to the ball, you'll see how your hands travel down that path or down that line, but your club head stays above that line or outside the line. So right now that club head is swinging on a different plane than your hands. We need to fix that. So that club head path is too steep and the golf shaft is too steep during that start down. The other thing is your hands get too far away from you during the downswing. And if you take a look at this view here, let's erase this line. So here's your golf swing. I'll create two images of that swing and superimpose those images. You can see the path of your backswing here. So I'll bring the backswing halfway back, and now I'll bring the second image. There's your backswing. I'll bring that down on the forward swing. And you can see how your hands swing outside of the hand path of your backswing. So if you look at the differences in where your club head is and where your hands are when you're halfway down versus when you're halfway back, two very different positions. There's your backswing. There's your downswing. The other thing I want you to take note of is as you swing down, look at the golf shaft and how it stays steep above your right forearm. When you're about halfway down, I like to see the club shaft be in line with your right forearm instead of above your right forearm here. What do I mean by that? Let's take a look at in comparison. Let's take a look at an image here, and we'll look at it from a couple different players. Halfway down, or during the downswing, right here, you'll see how the golf shaft lines up with the right forearm. And then as the downswing is continued, the club head just tracks right down the forearm, down that plane towards the ball. Your golf shaft too steep and way above your right forearm. Let's take a look at another view. During the downswing, there's the club shaft lining up with the forearm. Everything in a line right there. And then as the downswing is continued, the club head tracks right down that forearm and towards the ball. So whether you want to think of that as swing path or swing plane, those are kind of synonymous. And again, too steep. So how do we fix that? Well, one of the things we did today is we had you set up with an alignment stick underneath your golf club. And when you make a backswing, and you'll see it here, you'll see that alignment stick that you're holding along with your golf club. We talked about this butt end of the alignment stick right here. We talked about that tracing the target line. And during the backswing, actually pointing to the target line on the way back. So you can see if I draw a line or an arrow along this alignment stick, we would want that pointing somewhere close to the target line, or the butt of your club pointing somewhere close to that target line. And there you are looking back to check on it. Let's compare that position at the top to your golf swing here. and you can see how your left arm is on a much different angle now. Now what we talked about for this drill is when you start your downswing, you want to use the butt end of that alignment stick and just trace the target line until you get parallel to the ground. So take a look at your hand path and your club head path as you're doing this drill. Compared to your hand path and club path here. So as we go part way down, again you could see how steep the club shaft is compared to your right forearm. And in our drill, if I stop it part way down, now that club shaft is in line with your forearm. And your club head is in a much different position and on a much different path coming towards the ball. So the start down is going to be very important. Bumping the hips towards the target to begin shifting the weight. The hands will then drop and the club head just follows the path of the hands. Little side note here, I'd like to see those hands when you're halfway down. Just get a little bit closer to your body. But we'll talk about that in our next lesson. So just keep doing this drill. And then if you go to my website, you'll see in the blog section of my website several drills that will help with your start down. Particularly, I want you to look at the compare and contrast drill and the over-under drill. Again, if you go to my website, KevinEstrellaGolf.com, go to the blog section and look for those two drills, over-under and compare and contrast. This should help, and I'll see you at our next lesson.